Just before you assume all grannies are loving and caring, you might as well think twice after hearing these horrific stories. Behind the sweet smiles of some grannies are cold, hardened hearts that will make your stomach churn. In today's video, we'll reveal the shocking stories of the most feared grandmas behind bars. Their stories will leave you in shock and chilled to the bone. Dorothea Puente, country, U.S. state, California. Dorothea was classified as a killer who had many victims. On April 28, 1982, Ruth Monroe died from respiratory depression caused by a large overdose of codeine. She had visited Puente's care home 2 weeks earlier. When she arrived, she was reportedly in good health. But by April 25th, she told a friend she felt like she was going to die. Authorities first ruled her death an undetermined overdose, but they later classified it as a homicide. On May 16, 1982, 49-year-old Dorothy Osborne discovered that her checks, credit cards, and other belongings were missing. This happened 8 hours after Puente visited her home and made her a drink. In July 1982, a court convicted Puente of 3 counts of grand theft. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison. She remained on state parole until March 21, 1986. Her federal parole was extended by 2 more years, until 1990. While in prison, she started writing letters to Everson Theodore Gilmouth, a retiree from Oregon. In early September of 1985, Gilmouth drove to Sacramento with his truck and trailer and went to Puente's boarding house. On September 9, 1985, Puente was released from prison after serving only half her sentence. Gilmouth and Ricardo Ordorica picked her up. In October 1985, Puente wrote to Gilmouth's sister. She told her they planned to get married on November 2nd. Shortly after, Puente hired a handyman named Ismael Carrasco Flores to do some remodeling. She asked him to build a storage box that was 6 feet long, 30 inches wide, and 30 inches tall. As payment, she promised him Gilmouth's truck and $800. The day after Flores finished building the box, he returned and found it nailed shut. Puente asked him to help move the box, which weighed about 300 pounds. She said she wanted to put it in storage, but they dumped it near a river about 1 hour outside Sacramento. On January 1, 1986, a fisherman found the box near the Sacramento River. He called the police. When authorities opened it, they found a human body inside. On December 28, 1998, officials confirmed the body was Gilmouth's. From 1986 to 88, Puente continued her killing spree. According to a report, 7 more people wound up dead. The murder that led to Puente's arrest was the murder of Alvaro Montoya. In February 1988, Alvaro Bert Gonzalez Montoya moved into Puente's home. In March, someone filed an application naming Puente as the person to receive Montoya's benefit payments. At the end of August, a roommate saw a man removing Montoya's clothes from the closet. Montoya was last seen on August 24th and missed an appointment on August 29th. Puente told several people that Montoya had traveled to Mexico to visit his relatives. A few days later, officials found Montoya's body buried near the area where a man named Carpenter had been working. On November 11, 1988, a detective returned to Puente's home. With her permission, he began digging in areas that looked recently disturbed. After 30 minutes, he found the first body. Just a few hours later, Puente escaped from police custody. On November 13, 1988, authorities issued an all-points bulletin to find her. On November 16, 1988, Charles Wilgue and Jean Silver from CBS told the police where to find Puente. Wilguez had met her the day before at a bar near a motel in Los Angeles. She had used the name Donna Johansson. The next morning, Wilgue saw her face on a CBS News report and contacted Jean Silver. Silver went to Wilge's apartment. Together they called the local police. Officers arrested Puente later that same day. Puente's trial began on February 9, 1993. By the end of the trial, 156 witnesses had testified. The court received more than 3,100 exhibits and recorded over 22,000 pages of transcript. On August 26, 1993, the jury convicted Puente of 3 counts of murder. The victims were Benjamin Fink, Leona Carpenter, and Dorothy Miller. After 35 days of deliberation, the jury could not agree on 6 other cases. On December 10, 1993, the court sentenced Puente to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was sent to Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. Puente died in prison at Chowchilla on March 27, 2011, from natural causes. She was 82 years old. Griselda Blanco, country, U.S. state, Florida. Blanco and her first husband, Carlos Trujillo, began a marijuana dealing business in Colombia. In 1964, after divorcing Trujillo, Blanco entered the United States illegally, using fake documents and a false name. She eventually settled in Queens, New York, with her 3 children and her second husband, Alberto Bravo. Alberto Bravo worked as a cocaine smuggler for the Medellin cartel. Together, they built a successful substance operation in New York City. In April 1975, 9 years later, authorities identified Blanco and charged her with federal substance conspiracy offenses, along with 30 of her associates. The family fled to Colombia to escape conviction. Blanco returned to the United States during the late 1970s to start a new substance operation in Miami. Her return marked the start of many violent public conflicts in Metro Miami during the 1980s. Hundreds of people were killed each year during this time, known as the Miami Substance War. Cocaine became very profitable and was trafficked more than cannabis. Law enforcement worked hard to stop cocaine from flooding into Miami. On February 17, 1985, DEA agents arrested Blanco at her home. They charged her with conspiring to manufacture, import, and distribute cocaine. The case went to federal court in New York City. There, the jury found her guilty, and the judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison. While serving her sentence, Florida charged her with 3 additional counts of first-degree murder. The prosecutors made a deal with one of Blanco's trusted hitmen, Jorge Ayala. He agreed to testify that Blanco ordered him to carry out the killings. However, the case fell apart because of issues related to a phone sex scandal involving Ayala and 2 female secretaries at the state attorney's office. In 1998, Blanco pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder. The court sentenced her to 20 years in prison to be served at the same time as her other sentence. In 2004, because of her poor health, officials granted Blanco compassionate release. They deported her back to Colombia. On September 3, 2012, Blanco and her pregnant daughter-in-law went to the Cardizo butcher shop on the corner of 29th Street in Medellin. As Blanco walked out, a man on a motorcycle shot her twice in the head, killing her. The killing mimicked the assassination style Blanco had used during the Miami Substance War. Betty Newmar, country, U.S. state, North Carolina. Betty Ladden Johnson was married 5 times. She married Clarence Malone on November 25, 1950. They divorced in 1952. Malone remarried twice after their split. He was shot and killed on November 27, 1970, in Medina, Ohio. She married James A. Flynn on February 9, 1953. He was born in 1927 and was shot dead on a pier in New York in 1955. She married Nellos Richard Sills around 1956. He was born on July 28, 1930, and died on April 18, 1967. His death was from an allegedly self-inflicted gunshot wound during an argument in their Big Coppitt Key, Florida home. She married Thomas Harold Gentry around 1968. He was born on February 27, 1938. In 1986, he was found shot multiple times and dead in their Norwood, North Carolina home. She married John Newmar in 1991. He was born on May 22, 1928, and died on October 25, 2007. He died from apparent natural causes. The cause of death was listed as sepsis, ischemic colitis, and ileus, symptoms that might suggest arsenic poisoning. Newmar's death seemed suspicious because his son, John Newmar Jr., said he did not learn about the death until he read it in a newspaper. When he contacted the widow, she told him that his father had already been cremated, even though he had bought a burial plot. In May 2008, authorities charged Newmar with hiring a hitman to kill her husband. Investigators then examined the deaths of her other husbands more closely. 3 of them had been shot dead. In June 2008, 1 month after her arrest, officials extradited Newmar to Albemarle, North Carolina. North Carolina officials charged her with murdering her 4th husband, Harold Gentry, after receiving a tip about her involvement. The indictment states that Newmar asked a former police officer and her neighbor to kill her husband in the months before he died. The motive was said to be his $20,000 life insurance policy. Newmar faced 3 counts of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Officials released her in October 2008 on a bail bond of $300,000. Investigators seized the ashes of her 5th husband, John Newmar, and tested them for arsenic. The results were negative. On June 13, 2011, Betty Newmar died in a hospital in Alexandria, Louisiana, before her trial. Writers on Investigation Discovery's show Deadly Women, in the episode called Matriarchs of Murder, said she died from cancer. As of December 23, 2012, no one was actively reinvestigating the deaths of her 5 husbands. Tamara Samsonova. Country, Russia. City, St. Petersburg. Samsonova was known as Granny Ripper and Baba Yaga. She married Alexei Samsonov. In 1971, they settled in a newly built panel house, number 4 on Dimitrov Street. In 2000, Samsonova's husband disappeared. After her husband disappeared, Samsonova rented a room in her apartment. On the 6th of September, 2003, she argued with her tenant, Sergei Potanin. During the fight, she killed him. Potanin was a 44-year-old man from Norilsk. Samsonova cut up his body and threw the pieces onto the streets of St. Decius Way. In March 2015, a mutual friend asked 79-year-old Valentina Nikolaevna Ulanova, who lived on Dimitrov Street, to let Samsonova stay temporarily. Samsonova's apartment was being fixed. Samsonova lived in Ulanova's apartment for several months and helped with housework. Their relationship worsened, and when Ulanova asked Samsonova to leave, she refused. Samsonova traveled to Pushkin and convinced a pharmacist to sell her the prescription drug phenazepam. She mixed the pills into an Olivier salad, Ulanova's favorite dish, and gave it to her. On the night of July 23rd, Samsonova found Ulanova's body lying on the kitchen floor. The police identified the dead woman on the 27th of July after they asked the apartment residents. When the officers knocked on Ulanova's door, Samsonova answered. The police found blood in the bathroom and a curtain fastening that had been torn off. They arrested Samsonova. On the 29th of July, 2015, the court in the Frunze district of St. Petersburg brought Samsonova in. On the 26th of November 2015, a forensic psychiatric exam found that she was a danger to herself and society. The court sent her to a special institution until the investigation finished. In December 2015, Samsonova was moved to a psychiatric hospital in Kazan for compulsory treatment. Catherine Nevin, country, Ireland, city, Dublin. On the 19th of March, 1996, Tom Nevin was shot and killed with a shotgun. He was killed while counting the day's money in Jack White's pub near Britis Bay, County Wicklow. His wife, Catherine Nevin, said someone woke her by pressing her face into a pillow and threatening to kill her. He held a knife in his left hand. Everything in the room was falling apart. The thieves took over 16,000 Irish pounds in cash from the pub. They also stole the Nevin's car, which was later found abandoned in Dublin. On the 27th of July, 1996, police arrested Catherine Nevin on suspicion of murdering her husband, Tom, but they later released her without charging her. On the same day, police arrested former armed robber Jerry Heaps under a law called Section 30 of the Offenses Against the State Act in connection with Tom Nevin's murder. He was also released without charge. On the 14th of April, 1997, Catherine Nevin was charged with her husband's murder at Dublin District Court. The court kept her in custody. She was also charged with asking 3 other people to murder her husband between 1989 and 1990. They were William McLean, Jerry Heaps, and John Jones. On the 14th of January 2000, Catherine Nevin went on trial at the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. Justice Mella Carroll presided over the case. Nevin pleaded not guilty to murdering her husband, Tom Nevin, in 1996. She also denied 3 charges of asking others to kill him before his death. On the 11th of April 2000, after 5 days of jury discussion, the jury found Catherine Nevin guilty of murdering her husband. They agreed on the verdict unanimously. The court sentenced her to life in prison, the mandatory punishment for the crime. Nevin later received an extra 7 years for each charge. She served these sentences at the same time as her life sentence for murder. She served her time at the Docus Center in Dublin. In 2003, she lost an appeal. In 2010, she also lost a request to have her conviction called a miscarriage of justice. In 2016, doctors at the Mater Hospital diagnosed Nevin with a brain tumor. They said she had only months to live. She was released on compassionate grounds in late 2017. She died on the 19th of February, 2018 at 67. Velma Barfield, country, U.S. State, North Carolina. Barfield was convicted of 1 murder but linked to 7 in total. In 1974, Lillian Bullard, Barfield's mother, showed strong symptoms of diarrhea, vomiting, and nausea. She recovered fully after a few days. Later that year, during a Christmas visit, Bullard got sick again with the same symptoms. She died after being hospitalized on December 30th. The next year, Barfield was convicted of writing 7 bad checks. The court sentenced her to 6 months in prison. She was released after serving 3 months. In 1976, Barfield started caring for elderly people. She worked for Montgomery and Dolly Edwards in Lumberton. Montgomery got sick and died on January 29, 1977. Just over a month later, Dolly had the same symptoms as Bullard and died on March 1st. Barfield later admitted to killing Dolly. The next year, Barfield took another caretaker job for 76-year-old Record Lee, who had broken her leg. On June 4th, 1977, Lee's husband, John Henry, died. He had suffered from severe stomach and chest pains, vomiting, and diarrhea. Barfield later admitted to killing him. Another victim was Roland Stewart Taylor, Barfield's boyfriend and a relative of Dolly Edwards. Barfield feared he had found out that she was forging checks on his account. She mixed arsenic-based rat poison into his beer and tea. Taylor died on February 3, 1978, while Barfield was trying to nurse him back to health. An autopsy found arsenic in his system. After Barfield's arrest, Jennings' body was dug up and tested. The tests found traces of arsenic, but Barfield denied killing Jennings. Although she admitted to killing Bullard Dolly and John Henry Lee, the court only tried and convicted her for Taylor's murder. Barfield was sent to Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. She stayed in an area for prisoners who tried to escape or had mental illness because there was no special area for women on death row when she arrived. Barfield was executed on November 2, 1984, at Central Prison. Before her execution, she made a statement. "I know that everybody has gone through a lot of pain, all the families connected, and I am sorry, and I want to thank everybody who has been supporting me all these 6 years." For her last meal, Barfield ate cheese doodles and Coca-Cola. Judy Buenoano, country, U.S. State, Florida. Judy Us first married James Goodyear, a United States Air Force sergeant. He died on September 16, 1971, in Orlando, Florida. At first, people thought he died of natural causes. 2 years later, she moved in with Bobby Joe Morris, who lived in Trinidad, Colorado. He died from poison in January 1978. Later that year, she legally changed her last name to Buenoano, a corrupted Spanish phrase meaning good year. In 1961, Buenoano's son, Michael, became very sick. He had symptoms like paraplegia. She resented Michael because he was born out of wedlock. On May 13, 1980, Buenoano took Michael in a canoe in Milton, Florida. The canoe flipped over and Michael drowned. He was not wearing a life jacket and was weighed down by his arm and leg braces. After Michael died, Buenoano opened a beauty salon using money from his life insurance. In 1983, Buenoano was in a relationship with John Gentry, a wallpaper businessman. Gentry was badly injured when his car exploded in Pensacola, Florida. While Gentry recovered, the police found many inconsistencies in Buenoano's background. They also learned that in November 1982, she had told friends that Gentry had a terminal illness. The authorities found that the vitamin pills Buenoano gave Gentry contained arsenic and paraformaldehyde. They exhumed the bodies of Michael Goodyear, James Goodyear, and Bobby Joe Morris. All three had arsenic in their bodies. James Goodyear and Bobby Joe Morris died from arsenic poisoning. After each death, Buenoano received large life insurance payouts. She was arrested in 1983 on multiple charges. In 1984, Buenoano was convicted of murdering her son, Michael, and attempting to murder John Gentry. She received a 12-year sentence for the Gentry case and a life sentence for Michael's murder. In 1985, she was convicted of murdering her first husband, James Goodyear. The court sentenced her to death for his murder. She was held on death row for women at the Florida Department of Corrections, Broward Correctional Institution. On March 30, 1998, Buenoano was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Her last meal included steamed broccoli, asparagus, strawberries, tomato wedges, hot tea, and lemon. When asked if she had any last words, Buenoano said she didn't. Janie Lou Gibbs, country, U.S. State, Georgia. Gibbs committed her first murder in 1965. She poisoned her husband Charles by putting arsenic in his dinner. While he was in the hospital, she gave him homemade soup with more poison. 8 months after her husband died, Gibbs poisoned her youngest son, 13-year-old Marvin. He died on August 29, 1966. On January 23, 1967, another son, 16-year-old Melvin, died suddenly. Doctors said he died from a rare muscle disease. Gibbs had only one son left, 19-year-old Roger. Roger and his wife had a child named Ronnie. Gibbs was happy to become a grandmother. Soon, Ronnie became sick and died suddenly. Only a month later, his father, Roger, also died. After these sudden deaths of a healthy young man and his baby, the family doctor grew suspicious. The doctor sent the case to the state crime lab for investigation. An autopsy on Roger showed he had a deadly amount of arsenic in his body. Gibbs was arrested for murder on Christmas Day. The bodies of her husband and 2 buried sons were dug up. Autopsies found arsenic in all 5 murdered members of the Gibbs family. At first, doctors said Gibbs was not mentally fit to stand trial. She was sent to a mental institution where she worked as a cook. Later, she went to trial and was sentenced to 5 life sentences. Gibbs stayed in prison until 1999. That year, doctors diagnosed her with Parkinson's disease. She was released into the care of her sister. Gibbs died in 2010 in a nursing home in Douglasville, Georgia. Christine Falling, country, U.S. state, Florida. On February 25, 1980, 2-year-old Cassidy Johnson was taken to a doctor's office in Blountstown, Florida. The doctor diagnosed her with encephalitis. On February 28, Cassidy died. An autopsy showed she died from blunt force trauma to the skull. Falling, who had been babysitting Cassidy, said that Cassidy had passed out and fallen out of her crib. Shortly after Johnson's death, Falling moved to Lakeland, Florida. 2 months later, in early summer 1980, 4-year-old Jeffrey Davis died while Falling was watching him. The autopsy said he died from myocarditis, a heart condition that rarely causes death. 3 days later, Jeffrey's funeral was held. Falling was asked to care for Jeffrey's cousin, 2-year-old Joseph Spring. Joseph died a few hours later. Doctors said he died from a viral infection. They also said the virus might have caused Jeffrey's death. In July 1981, Falling left Lakeland and returned to her hometown of Perry in northern Florida. Few families trusted her to care for their children, so she started working as a nursing assistant and housekeeper for seniors. On the first day, she cared for 77-year-old William Swindle. He died in his kitchen. In the fall of that same year, Jennifer Daniels, the 8-month-old daughter of Falling's half-sister, died. The turning point in the strange series of deaths was when 10-week-old Travis Coleman died on July 2, 1982, while Falling was caring for him in Blountstown. The autopsy showed internal injuries that only suffocation could have caused. When the police contacted Falling, she confessed to murdering 3 children. She said she heard voices telling her, "Kill the baby." She suffocated the children with pillows and blankets. Falling pleaded guilty to killing Johnson, Daniels, and Coleman. In December 1982, Falling was sentenced to life in prison. Her confession stopped her from receiving the death penalty. She is serving her sentence at Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. Sheila Labaree, country, U.S. state, New Hampshire. Kenny County met Labar through a personal ad in 2006 in Wilmington, Massachusetts. He was 24 years old. He moved in with her soon after they met. People said County had a low IQ and trusted easily, like a child. Labar recorded him vomiting while accusing him of being a pedophile. She stabbed him to death and then burned his body. The police identified his DNA using his Army records. Deloge was Labar's boyfriend. He lived with her on her farm. He was last seen alive in 2005. In 2008, police found a bone, a spent shell casing, and his birth certificate in the farm's septic tank. How he died is unknown. His mother told the police she was worried Labar wanted to kill him. On April 1, 2006, police issued an arrest warrant for Sheila Labar on charges of first-degree murder. She was arrested the next day, April 2nd. Police searched her farm for 3 weeks. During the search, they found 3 human toes. Forensic tests showed the toes did not belong to Kenny County or Michael Deloge. Labar pleaded not guilty because of insanity, but the jury rejected this. They found her guilty, and in June 2008, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In 2010, her appeal was denied. Labar is now serving her sentence at New Hampshire State Prison for Women. If you enjoy the way we create videos and would like us to bring more cases like this to light, please hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth dives.